You're listening to Raising Anchor, the Rhode Island FC podcast, now part of the Blazing Musket family. We're glad you're here. Hello and welcome to Raising Anchor, your podcast and source for all things Rhode Island FC. I'm your host, Matt Inchigan, and joining me today is head coach and general manager Khano Smith. Khano, welcome back to the podcast. It's been almost 14 months to the day since we last talked. Lots of things to talk about today. How you been? How's everything going on in your life?
Yeah, good. Had a little downtime, little week away after the final. So yeah, getting back into it and kind of chasing my tail a little bit, trying to catch up on everything. But yeah, it's all good problems to have.
What does the off season look like for the technical staff? Like, do you guys have the traditional break time, or is it just full pedal to the metal as you look forward to 2025?
No, I definitely took a week after the season. And obviously, it's unique. You know, it's the first time we've ever done it. So I think each off season is different. The league's changing. You know, player acquisition methods are changing. You know, so many different buckets. I think for us, another big window will happen next week after MLS goes through all their processes and people start figuring out that they're not part of the MLS world anymore. So I think our roster's in a really good place. Ultimately, we're only looking for players now that we feel can push to make our starting 11 better or come in and displace somebody in the starting 11. We have a really good core and really good group that we're happy with coming with. So yeah, totally different picture than last year this time.
So we'll touch base on that towards the end here, but I want to start with looking back and into the past. And, you know, getting right into it, we talked at the block party and you had said some really touching things about the community and the team's evolution. But, you know, anyone that has had a couple of minutes getting to talk to you knows that your favorite subject is talking not about yourself, but about others. And I'd like to ask, just to kind of kick things off here, as you reflect on your first year as a head coach, what were some of the lessons that you had to learn now being in that head gaffer role? What were some of the adjustments you had to make to your overall coaching strategy and style?
Look, I think as the team kind of progressed, you know, it's ultimately like I think each team goes through a storm, and we went through plenty of storms, and ultimately, I think just sticking to who we were, who I am, like I couldn't change. I can't fake it. I can't come in and be happy when I'm unhappy. I can't be unhappy when I am happy. Like, I think I have to be myself and be genuine. I think if anybody comes to our environment, I think they see that our staff have a lot of responsibility, a lot of autonomy. Like, again, I'm not a micromanager. I don't like to manage people. I want to hire good people. I'm not insecure about my level of expertise. I know I don't know everything. I can't know everything. So yeah, I just feel like we created a really good working environment. That's for staff, for players, for everybody to thrive and get better. And ultimately, a lot of my job as the leader is to try and inspire people. And hopefully I did that. Wish I could have did it one more time, but it didn't work out that way. What I'm most proud of is the people that I get to come to work with every day, our staff. I really enjoy working with them. The players, like, I think we have a really good group and we've been successful. So yeah, hopefully we can all just stay together and try and do it again, because it's going to be difficult. You know, as teams become successful, it's harder to keep those groups together. Like, you look at any sport and any group, like it's hard to build dynasties and have people do it again and again. We beat Louisville this year, but we're still chasing them as a club. You know, like, for me, they're the dynasty, they're the standard. It was the first time within 10 years that they weren't in the Eastern Conference Final, and we were fortunate enough to beat them. But yeah, they'll be back. So that's the standard we're chasing.
You know, you said a second ago how you've been trying to inspire and build an environment. One of the words that you've been anti-using this year, though, was the C word in culture. I'm curious, is that the word that you use to replace culture? Like, I've never really been able to ask you, in lieu of that, what have you been trying to build organizationally here?
Yeah, I think, well, for me, culture is what it is, and everybody talks about it. Everybody says their environment's the best. Everybody says that they're trying to create a good culture and have a good environment. Ultimately, it's just behaviors of what's acceptable and what's not. So what's acceptable? Bad body language is not acceptable. Pouting is not acceptable. Being not a good teammate is not acceptable. Supporting your teammates is acceptable. Whatever problem you have with me, like, I have to make tough decisions all the time. Like, it's never personal. It's never personal. It's to win and to help the team win and do what I feel is best to help the team win. I'm never always going to get it right. I know that. I made mistakes this year. I'm going to make them again. But it's always with the best of intentions. So yeah, for me, it's The culture word is what behaviors are acceptable and what's not acceptable in your environment.
When you look back at that, one of the pillars that the ownership group, I heard a lot this year was the hunt for good people, both in the technical staff, the front office, as well as the player group. I heard through different conversations with you and other people that there were probably players, looking at last year's acquisitions, that there were players that were maybe even better than some of the ones you were able to pick up, but they didn't fit your system when it came to being a good person. I guess if you had to define it, on the record, what do you constitute as a good person?
You got to use words that never go out of style. Respect is one. Like, I think we talk about, we're big on, like, when we travel and, like, when we go places, like, we don't want to leave a hotel and the people working at the hotel, like, oh my God, those guys are a disaster. That team's a disaster. They left it filthy. Like, they were loud. Like, little things like that. Respecting people, saying good morning, what kind of was really cool. And it took on a brain of its own. I don't know where it really started, but every morning, we all shook hands. The players came in, we had a meeting, like they sat down and they shook every coach's hand. So I that was never intentional. Like that kind of just grew on its own. I don't know where it started, who started it, but it's what we do. So whatever day you're having, whatever day I'm having, you greet each other, you say good morning. And for us, I just think it's an exchange of energy. Like we're all connected, like as human beings, without getting too deep or philosophical, like we're all connected. So exchanging of energy, like again, we want people that are energy givers and not energy zappers. Like give people energy. Like if you're an energy zapper, you ain't gonna last long anywhere, like in any world, in any environment. So you need to bring energy to a room and to a group of people. And I think that's what we really did, was get more energy givers than zappers.
Starting with this preseason, looking back here, I look at it from an outsider's perspective and look at, the incredible support that the front office and you were able to provide. I mean, I don't know a lot of USL teams that get to go and get a preseason camp in Bermuda or go to the IMG facilities down in Florida. Looking back at that as you were trying to gel these young men into what would become the future of this club, what were kind of the key takeaways from that time? I know that was their gelling time, but I know you also worked through some adversity with Amos's injury, Isaac's injury. Connor got the knock at the beginning of the season. Was that all par for the course?
The time on the pitch and what we got to accomplish technically in IMG, 10 out of 10, but they were awkward. Like they were strangers, they were cliques. Like it had to be intentional. Like I'm like, okay, no, you don't sit there. You go sit over there because you're sitting with the same person you sat 4 days in a row. Go sit somewhere else. Go talk to somebody else. So to see where it was in Charleston, I really looked back on it. In Charleston, it was just a group of people sitting around. They were playing. I mean, I mentioned it at the block party. Like they were playing stupid drinking games. They weren't drinking, but obviously they were playing a stupid drinking game and just laughing. Like, and I'm like, look at this. We're in the same scenario in a hotel, in a room, and they're just literally being stupid kids playing a drinking game. Whereas IMG, they were like cliques, and they were. So that was really cool to see. But again, that stuff you can't speed it up. Like it takes the time, and different groups take different time. Like they clicked and bonded in their own time. It's not like they weren't trying to do it. It's no recipe for human beings. Like they're all human beings. So yeah, it was really cool to see that. I think Bermuda kind of maybe accelerated the process a little bit because we did try to do some stuff pretty intentional, and we did this thing, that Dave had brought to my attention and brought to the group, and we did like a hero highlight and hardship, and it was some tears shed in that, like people talk about the hero and the hardship and the highlight of their life. So we didn't force people to go. We just said, if you want to go, you can go. I obviously went first. Some of the staff followed. So I think that kind of brought people together, and whatever it is, something about Bermuda too. 3 teams that I've been involved in have been there for preseason. They've all made it to the final, so haven't won yet. But so having said that, we're going back again this year.
So, when we last talked, looking at this roster and the construction of it, you had hinted early on, and this is before even Koke was announced, that maybe you were considering a 4-3-3. The one thing that you had said at the time was that you wanted to make sure that you played with obvious possession, intentful possession, and being able to play out the back. By the time we get to the first kickoff against New Mexico United, we're in a 3-5-2 or a 5-3-2 if you ask the pundits. I know how you feel about it. Mm-hmm. But I'd ask, between that time when we last talked and that first kickoff at Bryant, what changed tactically? What changed in the direction that you saw the 3-5-2 becoming? what this club was going to see out for the remainder of the season primarily? Was it the player acquisitions? Was it maybe you weren't going to tip your hand in case anyone was listening to the podcast back then? What kind of happened between then and now as to why the 3-5-2 kind of rang true?
I think it just suited the group of players, like more so. I think I see the game easier with the back four and the midfield 3 and 3 up top, but it did not suit this group of players. So whatever formation we played, look, if you took the jerseys off, and I think you could maybe still, from that game to the end of the year, maybe identify, okay, yeah, that's a Rhode Island FC team. So I think it just suited the players, you know, and there's obviously key ones in there. Like you look at the center backs, like I think it suited Grant more. You know, and Grant missed a large portion of the year with injury. It suited Jojea, you know, maybe suited Frank, it maybe suited Karifa. Like it suited so many of them, and I think others could have played in other systems, but I think it puts a couple. And look, those are just names that I'm throwing out that I think it helped, but I don't think it helped others. You know, but we wanted to play with 2 forwards because we had JJ and Albert, and obviously Noah came into that mix. Mark Doyle came into that mix, but I think Steven benefited from the 3-5-2. So yeah, I just think it was just what I felt and what I smelled, and I think it suited that group better positionally. But ultimately, they're still moving. It's 11 people moving, so I'm sure you could have took a still picture and it looked like a 2-4-3. I don't know. Like, you know, it could look like wherever. Like it all am I missing a player there? Yeah, I'm missing a player. That's down so 3-4-3. Yeah. So it could look like anything, right? So yeah, I think those are just starting positions on a piece of paper. But yeah, I think putting them in those starting positions, I think gave certain people a better chance at being successful.
Absolutely. I mean, it also depends where Koke is ranging at the time, right?
Yeah, Koke is the best defensive midfielder in the league. That's what
I guess to add on to that then, you know, obviously you have to be fluid. You have to be able to read what your players are capable of. Was there an acquisition or the lack of acquisition that kind of, I don't want to say forced your hand, but made it go to that? Because you're saying how these suited certain strengths, but obviously it's a game of chess as you're trying to pick up talent and build that team. Was there one like key player that you had to structure that around, or was there a lack of being able to go out and say, get the left back that you were targeting, and because of that, like it evolved the tactic?
I wouldn't say there was one. I just think again, it's just whenever you look at it, it benefited more people to play that way. Like I certainly think it look, Karifa could play in the back four, no problem. Frank could play in the back four, so can Grant. But I think the 3 of them as a group were better in. And it's also like, okay, which players do you need to get on the pitch? Like, okay, if we play with the back 4, like, then you're taking off one of the center backs that played 25 plus games. So ultimately, like, who deserves to play in that moment? Like, who's in form? You know, like Grant came back, certainly helped change our fortune. Karifa played a lot, and so did Frank. So ultimately, okay, yeah, Frank can probably play right back in a 4, but that's not his strength. And he ended up in the final playing wing back for us. So Frank's pretty versatile. So I just think, yeah, again, I think Jojea benefited a lot from it. Like I think his best position is a wing back because it allows him to get forward and allows him to have that side of the field himself. Yeah, I don't think there was one moment that really, or one person that changed. I just think it benefited the group more, and it put more of them in positions to be successful.
If we move into the regular season review, the first question I want to ask, you guys got to decide on players of the year in a collaboration with the front office when it came to awards. But one of my favorite things to ask, you know, and you had mentioned prior to your professional coaching when you were kind of in the academy systems, you'd mentioned a lot about catching details about players' development and their commitment to the game. I guess if I were to ask you, you know, off the cuff, is there a player that impressed you more in their personal growth and journey and development this year than any other player? You know, you have Y-Scout, you have data, you have tape, but is there someone that like you had a baseline expectation of and they just kind of blew you away with the expectations you had already set?
I guess you can look at it multiple ways, right? You can obviously start with Noah. Like Noah was player of the year, golden playmaker, second team all league. Like, did we think that guy was going to be that when we signed him? No. Did we expect that kid to start the majority of games when we got him? No. Like he was a good player that we knew could help the team. We didn't know where he was going to fit in. So yeah, if we're looking at top end, it's no. Like we did not. No one expected that. Like and maybe he did because his self-belief is incredibly high, and his work ethic, and you talk about being an energy giver. Like that kid, he just gives energy. Like, you know, he's good karma. Like So everything that happened to him was supposed to happen to him. So I would be lying if I said I knew that was going to happen. But no, I knew he was a good player. I knew he had potential, but it's ultimately like it's right place, right time. He obviously had 2 really good years in Columbus. He was at a really good place in his career. He ended up with a coaching staff that maybe suited him best. I don't know, maybe somebody else suited him better, but I know we impacted him positively. And look, that kid, you show him some love and loyalty. Like, look what happens. Look what happens. So, yeah, him. But then you can go like Frank. Frank played the second most minutes. I mean, I could look it up. Frank played like 3,000 minutes, like the second most minutes on the team. Like, did we sign Frank to do that? No, but he developed into that, and he grew with that. But even then, you can go look at the players that didn't play. Like, I'm looking at minutes. Kevin Vang played 31 minutes, but what that guy brought to the team every single day, you ask his teammates what his value is to the team. Like, he's a competitor. He's a MFer, like in training. Like, he's getting into it with people. Like, he's gotten into where somebody's like grabbed his neck. They're not like crossing the line. Like, it's good competitive environment, you know? So what he brought every single day, and all those guys that didn't play a lot of minutes, like Isaac played 127 minutes. He had 2 goal involvements. So yeah, they've all played their part. But yeah, even a guy Kevin Vang played 31 minutes. But I think he developed and he grew into a professional. Like, he wasn't that last year. Last year he was doing whatever he was doing. He was coaching U16 for Bayside. So, and he's still doing that. But yeah, he's growing into a professional. And honestly, I think he's so key to our team, because if he shows up every single day, the guy that played the least amount of minutes on the team, 31 minutes, and he shows up and competes every day and never complains, like, that's, the value of that is so underestimated, and nobody on the outside would know that, but everybody loves Kevin Vang. Coaching staff, players, everyone. So
It sounds like, both on and off the pitch, it really has been this coming together. I don't know if family is the right word, but from an outsider, again, it looks like that's really what has gone on here. You've credited Memphis as that spark, that moment where something just clicked for the guys. Mm-hmm. And, the results speak for themselves. At that point, it was the next game where you went out to just destroy Lou City, but that was only your second win of the season. And then you guys went on this tear, 26 points through the end of August. You were the hottest team through the summer, basically. I guess, we know the story of how the locker room finally clicked, but I want to also ask you, was it just a mentality block that, like, that's all these guys needed to get over to be the team that you saw in them? Or were there tactical changes? Were there things that you recognized in the technical staff that needed to adjust to get us from, okay, we drew by coming back, in the late, scoring 15 minutes to go, and just push the team over the edge to get all 3 points? Was there something in there besides just their mentality, or was it just really all in their head?
I think it was little tactical tweaks. We certainly learned something in that Louisville game. Like, look, we could have been down 3-0 in that first half easily. In that Louisville game, we end up going up somehow up 2-0 in that, and we made some tactical changes that I think for surely impacted that second half and helped us in the game, beating them in the playoffs, and helped us in subsequent games going throughout the year. So there was some small tactical adjustments that helped us get better. But honestly, I think the overriding thing is that they're a group of human beings. They've been together. They've had some tough times. They're going through storms here, there, and they just needed to learn how to win together, and believe together in each other. Like, look, those games, we had tough games in there. That Memphis game, Pittsburgh, we tied. Like, we weren't losing, So we had Charleston at home. Like, those are all tough games. And this league is going to be the same again next year. Those games are tough. It's no easy games. And they just needed to experience success together. And again, it's a group of people. Like, it's no recipe. It just takes time, and you have to stick to who you are. If we start changing and all of a sudden I'm like yelling and like screaming at people, and I'm like, what? That's not who he is. So you just have to stick to what you think works, rightfully or wrongfully, and just keep pushing on and keep going towards a common goal. So they just needed to experience that feeling together. And they did in Vegas, but we hadn't experienced it at home. So it's like you're going there, oh, we're at this place again. We haven't won in this place. Like, it's just all those feelings you have to go through and experience together. So it just, again, no recipe. They just did it whenever they needed to do it.
You were very aggressive throughout the season in making necessary changes to the roster. One of my favorite things that I hear you say is the roster is never complete. And we saw that. We saw Isaac get his contract at the end of April. We saw Jack Panayiotou come in from loan. We did see the departure of Prince Sadie, but then the acquisition of Zach Harivo. And then we saw Jack Panayiotou return to the team, as well as Morris Dugan. I guess I'd ask, we didn't see a lot of that around the league. It seems like a lot of teams, whether it's budget constraints or it's like this is the group of guys I'm going with to battle and I'm going to figure it out or I don't. You were very fluid. You were very capable of retool and upgrade where that came from. To start things off, were these players all on your radar in preseason as like great to haves if we can get them? Or did this come as the season wins weren't necessarily coming at where you're like, hey, these are where I need to make the tactical changes and this is the talent I want to go out and get?
Yeah, I think it was more individual cases. In the case of moving Prince on, like Prince was a great part of the locker room. Like it was a sad day when he had to leave. Like people were, welling up, had tears like he did because we felt we treated him well. But he's 29 and he needed to play and he wasn't playing here. So an opportunity came for him to go and play with another good coach and another good team. And it's like, Prince, I think this would be a good fit for you. I'm not telling you have to go because you don't have to go. Like you have to decide if you want to go. But I think this could be a good fit for you. It allows us to have some flexibility to make moves and I think it was a win for everybody, for him, for them. Like he made them better. Obviously, I'm sure he would have loved to contribute it more there, but that gave us the room. And then the Zach situation came up. Like he obviously wasn't playing there. He was back playing, and he wasn't playing. So it was literally almost essentially like a straight swap, so it was easy. And look, Zach's, again, everybody knows the history of me and Zach. I've known Zach since he was 12 years old. Like we've always said we wanted to work together, and he is the prime example of you show him a little bit of love and care, like what that guy will go and do for the team. It's like incredible, and it's not just me, it's not just my relationship with me. Like he knows Spratty, he knows Marcos, he obviously got to know Dave, and he's close to home. His parents are 30 minutes up the road. Like it was a perfect, if his environment is correct, you're gonna get the best out of him. So the environment was perfect for him. Jack, we had always been in conversation with the Revs about because we were looking for that profile player. We knew that he needed more. Like he's mastered the MLS Next Pro level. He obviously wasn't getting much MLS first team opportunity, so we felt we could help him, and we felt he could help us because he's a unique profile that we didn't have. Morris, we had our eyes on Morris ever since last year. We had some conversations before he got drafted. We don't need to go into too much detail all about that, but he was always on our radar, and we always kept in touch with Minnesota. And then when he became available, again, unique profile that we didn't have. Not many teams have a good left-footed defender, center back that can defend, that can pass. Like Morris is almost a unicorn in world football. Like it's not many players that can do that. Everybody's right-footed, right? So a good left-footed defender that's 6 foot plus, that can head the ball, that can pass, that can defend 1v1 duels. Like we would have been silly not to have him, and he just provided that balance for the team. So
then I have to ask, you kind of said it earlier that it's one of the toughest decisions that you have to make as a head coach. But obviously you bring in all this talent. Morris basically became a lock-on starter the second he showed up. It displaces some of who were already starting and making those contributions. As a leader of men, how do you manage those expectations when, like, this is how we started something, this is where we evolve? What's Khano Smith's style, or maybe it's not that it's your style? Like, how do you manage expectations for professionals trying to get minutes?
Transparency and honesty, and sometimes it's like you don't really have an answer. Of like, you look somebody in the eye, somebody could have played really well last week, and you're like, this is just what I feel. I really don't have an answer for you. This is what I feel, or I feel that this person is better than you. I feel like this person has a better chance to help us win. Again, just always end the conversation. Like, I just want to be open and honest with you. It's nothing personal. You should know that. You know that about me. It's not personal. It's just what I think, and I have to make tough decisions. What I think helps the team win. So I'm always going to make decisions based on what I think gives us the best chance to win. It's never personal. So I think if you just open and honest with people, they understand. Maybe sometimes they don't understand, but at least they know where it's coming from, what the intentions are, and the intentions are always to help the team win. So other than that, I can't make them based off of emotions or my personal biases or your personal biases. It's what I feel. I'm the leader. I have to make tough decisions every single day, but it's always for what's best for the team. I feel, anyway.
Before we move into the playoff conversation here, I want to ask you, in the regular season, if you had to reflect on a favorite moment, whether it was a result, it was just something major or minor that happened in a game, in the locker room, what's something that just kind of reverberates in your mind as like, that was one of my favorite things to participate in or get to see in that regular season for the club?
So many, but if I had to pick one, I mean, I could pick many wins that we had here. Some had more personal feelings than others for whatever reason. I won't get into them. I don't know. I would say the first win in Vegas, just because it was the first time that we had won together, and like, I mean, what a place to be able to go celebrate your first win. So that one's an easy one, but yeah, it's many others. I just say that because that's probably the first one. But even in the New Mexico game was like an amazing feeling. Like, I think it set us up for the year. Like, it set up so much of what this team was going to be. It showed everybody the team spirit. We're like banging on the door the entire game. We can't knock it down. They keep going, and we get a goal. And a game that we probably should have won. But yeah, I think that game was like a little microcosm of what the team became and set a really good platform for what people could come to expect here. And that was what we were. A team we just never gave up, good team spirit, just kept going all the time.
Was there any burden that you placed on yourself personally until that first win rolled through, or did you know that it was always going to come and you just had to marshal towards when that would finally happen?
I didn't know it was going to come because I didn't know when it was going to come. But yeah, look, I probably don't handle wins better than anybody, like internally, but I also can't show that to them. Like, I can't show that I'm disappointed. I can't show that I'm frustrated with myself, them, referees, whoever, all the external factors. Like, what we always say is just next action. Whatever it is, the next action is whatever. If we lose and I have to go to a press conference, like, next action. I can't be sulking in the press conference because I felt whatever didn't go our way. Like, it's just whatever's next. But no, I did not know that win was going to come, but I ultimately have to stay good to myself and be a good leader and show up for them. Like, what I'm feeling probably doesn't really matter as much as what the spirit of the team needs. Like, that's what I feel a leader is. Like, I have to be what they need me to be in that moment. Sometimes they need me to be yelling at them and getting on them. Not really. It wasn't often because it's never like they didn't want to win. So yeah, just dealing with those moments in the best way I felt possible.
We saw you often fight for this team this year, and you were always transparent about never promising wins. Yet here you are, you made it all the way to the USL Cup final. How did you manage your own expectations and the team's expectations? You know, you win once away, you move further. You win again, you move further in. When did it become real that you were in the final, or did it never become real because you wouldn't let yourself, get to that point yet?
Yeah, the indie game, I always felt we were kind of in control of that game. And we weren't, were we in the playoffs? So let's backtrack. Were we in the playoffs? Were we not? Like, who knew? Like, it could have came down to that Miami game, which would have been a really tricky situation, by the way. A team that has nothing to play for. All of a sudden, they score a goal off a set piece, and we need to win that game. We lose 1-0. All of a sudden, we can now go into that game playing with no pressure. And I'm like, guys, you need to be ruthless. I don't care who they're playing, whatever they want to do. You need to be ruthless, and you need to go out and you need to kill somebody because you need to feel it and we need to feel it. And you've given yourself essentially a mulligan in this game to be able to go out and do it. But good teams and championship teams respectfully punish this team. Like, they killed them. And that's what you need to do. So they did that. So did that give them a little bit extra belief? It certainly gave JJ some. It gave him some confidence, which was good because, I mean, the guy was a different man after that. Like, walking around, you see him in the building smiling, laughing. Like, what I like to say, goals give people wings. Like, he got some wings. Like, he got some wings after that. So yeah, the indie game, definitely felt in control the entire time. Obviously got really, really tight towards the end, being down to 10 men. Unfortunate injury for Steven. Couldn't make a sub because he was one of the last subs. The Louisville game, I think, again, incredible team, incredible club. They were incredibly hospitable to us, like gracious in defeat. Like, they're just, I don't know, I just love the way they do things there. But I didn't believe we were going to win that game until Koke made the penalty save. I was still like nervous up until the point, the entire game, because they have so much quality all over the field. So, and then maybe the Charleston game, you go into that game, I think I didn't feel I felt a little bit of comfort after we scored the second goal because I was giving it to the referee. I'm like, how is Marcanic still on the pitch? Like, he went and he chest bumped the referee and he's still on the pitch. I'm like, how is that possible? So I'm having a conversation with the referee and Noah goes down and scores. So like the emotion that I let out and then like that's not normal. And throughout the playoffs, there was always one person, there's always somebody like giving it to me. Like it was dominant in the playoffs. Every single place, there was somebody. So we scored that and I yelled and screamed. And there was some guy behind the bench. I just turned around and winked at him. I was like, yeah, like so that. But even then, I never felt like, because then the goal went in. I'm like, all right, here we go. Like, here we go. 30 minutes. We have to defend for our lives. So that game, until the final whistle went, I never had, I mean, obviously I had belief, but I'm like, they could score here. They could score, and it could be totally different. And I'm thinking, like, okay, well, if they score, what do I do? Like, what do we do? So, but again, the guys defended amazingly that last little bit in that game and the Louisville game.
You were both a player in the MLS. You've been a coach now in so many different systems. How does this season rank? It'd be impossible to put a number to it, but like, highs and lows, is this one of the best seasons in your soccer, let's call it globe, that you've ever gotten to experience?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as a player, and look, I try to tell them, like, yesterday I was 24, and it's going to be over really quick for you guys. Hopefully not, but enjoy the experiences, like, with your teams. I try to say, like, getting to finals. I've been to finals and unfortunately lost, and I said, but even though the experiences that you're going to gather, like, some of you are going to be friends for life. Like, you're going to have friends for life out of this group. So really try and take it in and enjoy the experience no matter what happens. But yeah, I think as a coach, it's different because you see it from such a higher altitude, and you see things that they don't see. So yeah, it's probably my most enjoyable because, yeah, as you just get older, those moments happen less and less. So yeah, I mean, even though we didn't win, like, it's certainly up there. I mean, I could probably look at, it felt a little bit like the first time we made the cup final with the Revs. It's just like so many moments, like, what is going on? Like, what is happening right now? Like, are we really doing this? Like, is this really happening? Sometimes you're like, are you dreaming? Like, it's just, I don't know, I can't explain the feeling. But I know it feels good.
Your initial roster decisions are out. Some players have now left the organization, some still in talks to hopefully come back or find a path to continue with Rhode Island FC. But you've also immediately retooled in going out and signing one of the best center midfielders in the league in Maxi Rodriguez. Obviously, there's way more work to still do in this offseason. But I want to ask, in connection to those changes and decisions, you've set a very high bar in year one. Does that change your internal expectations? Does that change ownership's expectations? Like, do you have to run it back now at this point? It sounds like a silly question I have to ask you, but like, the bar is now so high in year two. It's a brand new retool in Tidewater opening. What's going through your mind as you do all of that and take that all in?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I know it sounds really cliche, but the goal for me is to try and win the next game. So whenever that is, and to progress, I think progress is not always like, okay, so let's just say we don't make the final next year. Like, did we progress? It's only one way we can progress is by making it to the final. So if we didn't progress. I don't believe that that's true. I think we can make progress in so many other ways. We're going into a new home, new stadium. We're setting a new culture. We need to get a training ground. There's so many ways we can grow as a club. We can progress in medical department, how we take care of players. Like, it's so many different ways that we can progress. So there's small metric and small numbers that you can look at. Yes, results are obviously signs of improvement, but there's only one way we can improve in the postseason, and that's win the USL Championship. So if we don't win that, will we be a failure? I don't know. Maybe somebody else's eyes, we may be. But in regular season in the league, there's so much for us to achieve. We can finish in the top four. If we don't finish in the top four, do we have a worse year? I don't know. Maybe we win more games next year and we don't finish fifth. Maybe we finish sixth. Like, the league's crazy. Who knows what's going to happen? So honestly, just try and get better every single day. Try and make the roster better, in my opinion. Will we make mistakes? Yes. I think we have a really good core of players that we're bringing back that we need to try and keep together for a long time. But as you know, with success, that is difficult. So we want to do that, and that's our intention, and build on that. And the players that we we let go. Some of it was their decision, some of it was ours, but ultimately we wanted to do what's best for them. And the ones that didn't get much playing time, like maybe it's a conversation, like you're 24 or 25, you need to go somewhere and play, you need to go get game time. It's not going to happen for you here. But also we need to refresh the roster, and also we need to challenge some of our players that are in the starting lineup that played a lot of games, like for us to improve and get better. Some of them need to get knocked out of the starting lineup. Some of them need to play more games than they did. Some of them need to play less than they did. So it's ultimately just trying to get better every single time, keep it fresh. As coaches, we need to do different things. They don't want to hear the same things. They don't want to do the same practice. But ultimately, it's, again, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable in the environment, making it fun, making a place where people want to come to work but be challenged. Some people need to be challenged in obviously different ways than others. But yeah, ultimately, it's just trying to get better to win the next game.
I want to ask you one last question. If you were in charge of the USL today, what adjustments or changes would you make to the league in any way, shape, or form? It could be logistics, resources, talent, administration. What's something that you saw in your first year as a head coach where you're like, man, if I was in charge, I would do this differently?
A lot. So you've opened up a can of worms here.
Don't get yourself in trouble.
No, I won't. I won't. But look, I think the league knows this. They know how I feel about this. And this is not, I'm not saying this is all the league's fault, because the league is trying to grow and get better. Unless you're playing in the Russian Premier League, the travel in USL is horrendous. And that's nobody's fault. It's just the greatest thing about this country is the worst thing about this country for soccer. It's so big. It's so many different climates. You can go to Florida, you can go to Colorado, you can go to California, you can go to Seattle, you can go wherever. So that's difficult. That's really difficult. So again, it took MLS years to get to that place where they made travel easy. So if there's a way that we can improve travel, we need to improve stadiums and infrastructure. And obviously we are doing that. So we're leading in that chase. And obviously we're looking at training ground solutions. We need to do that. But all of those things to make the league legitimate can push this league on, because that's ultimately what we want, is to make the game better in this country. So this league needs to get better, and that's two ways, in my opinion, that the league can improve. And they know that. So I'm not saying anything that I haven't said to anybody at the league, and they believe that. The league believes that too. So obviously it just takes time. You can't just force people to do things like that have contributed to the success of the league. But improving travel, improving stadiums and infrastructure in the league, I think is one way we can drive this league forward, drive the game forward in this country, is as the World Cup comes here. Like, I also try to look at big picture. Like my job ultimately is to win games for Rhode FC, but the romantic in you wants to improve the game in the country for everybody. So that's the role that this league plays, that we play in some small way, and we're doing our part. From a competitions perspective, the league needs to figure out a way, as we get better, we should not lose one of our best players for one of the biggest games of the year. Like, we lost Joe Jaya for a conference final. Like, I get it, international windows, not every team has that problem. Colorado had that problem. They missed guys for the conference final. So did we. That cannot happen, like, moving forward. And I know it's like, well, do you stop games in the playoffs? Do you have a break in the playoffs just because one or two teams are going to be missing guys? No, you just play. But maybe it's, you recognize the international windows in the postseason. Like, it's sucked to not have Joe Jaya for a conference final. Like, what are we doing this for? Like, he's one of our best players. We want him to play in this game. And if I'm him, I want to go and play in that game too, because it's an important game for Rwanda. So it's not a choice that he should have to make. And I didn't hold that against him, and I said that to him. I said, you're in a tough position. I'm never going to ask you to make that decision. Ultimately, you got called up by your national team. You have to go. But it sucks to be able to put a player in that position and a club in that position that you can't have one of your best players for literally the game that you brought him there for. You can't have him.
Would you condense the schedule to get it all done before that break, or would you put the pause in?
Again, it's challenging, but they don't pay me to do that. So I don't know why. I don't know what I would do. It's a really, really tough decision. So it's like, yeah, you recognize, but maybe you have to recognize them in the postseason, but I get it. MLS now, they're at the stage where they have 7 to 10 players that teams are missing. They can't do it. Whereas USL is at the place where they have 1 or 2, maybe it's 1 or 2 teams that miss 1 or 2 players. So it's not worth it to not play. But selfishly, like, it sucked not having one of our best players for like one of the most important. Like, what did we bring? Like, what are we doing? I'm like, what am I waking up this morning for? Like, that's for him to play in this game. That's why we're here. Our best player, one of our best players, to play in the biggest game of the year so far. Luckily, we got him back for the final. But yeah, that at some point we're gonna need to grow and evolve in that regard. But it's obviously not a problem for today.
Well, Coach, I thank you for your time, your candor, and your transparency. I look forward to connecting with you again in that preseason, and I hope you and the rest of the staff and all the players have a wonderful holiday. I know you won't be getting the break that you want because you're hard at work with the construction of the future for next year. But in the meantime, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today, and can't wait to catch up with you next year in 2025.
Sounds good. Thanks.
In the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter, Threads, and TikTok, as well as Blue Sky now at RIFC Podcast. You can catch us on the Instagram at Raising Anchor. You can also visit us at raisinganchorpodcast.com. And don't forget to check out The Blazing Musket, giving you all of your New England soccer coverage and RFC news at theblazingmusket.com. Until then, anchors up, and I hope everyone has a great holiday.